Greetings and good day, world. It's Wednesday, December 6, 2023, and you're watching Newsline World. I'm Kristel Guangco, and we will bring you the top stories we've gathered from all over the globe. SMNI program anchors Jeffrey Celis and Dr. Lorraine Badoy are on a hunger strike amid their detention at the House of Representatives to protest on what the latter calls a travesty that occurred during the congressional hearing of the SMNI franchise on Tuesday. In the Israel-Hamas war, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu urges human rights groups and women's rights groups to speak up on the violence allegedly done by Hamas on Israeli women. The Gulf Cooperation Council adopted a declaration calling for a comprehensive and sustainable ceasefire in Gaza. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy abruptly cancels the U.S. Senate briefing on the last minute. And Thailand and Hong Kong launch cross-border QR payments to boost tourism. This and more for tonight's edition of Newsline World. SMNI program anchors Dr. Lorraine Badoy and Jeffrey Celis are on a hunger strike, a move they initiated against the House of Representatives under the leadership of Speaker Martin Romualdez. MJ Poor.
Despite being under detention, Jeffrey Celis and Dr. Lorraine Badoy continues to fight for freedom. The Sambayanan group continues to call on the House leadership after the detention of former CPP-NPA-NDF cadre Jeffrey Celis and former NTF-LCAC spokesperson Lorraine Badoy. Both Kaerik and Dr. Badoy will remain in the detention facility at the House of Representatives until the committee report on the Legislative Franchise Panel's investigation into SMNI's franchise is adopted. Badoy and Celis are the anchors of SMNI's Laban Kasama ang Bayan, a program dedicated to fight the insurgency brought by the Communist Terrorist Group or CPP-NPA-NDF. According to Kawini Dublizo, the national president of Sambayanan, a broad organization of former comrades, rebels, and supporters and their families, that the two should be released from the HOR. Badoy and Celis is on a hunger strike while inside the Batasan to protest against the leadership due to their ordeal. They also pointed out that the target of the House hearing is not the SMNI franchise, but to silence them against the CPP-NPA-NDF. Before being brought to the detention facility on Tuesday, Celis referred to the House as a kangaroo court under the leadership of Speaker Martin Romualdez. Celis' action stems from the pressure to disclose the source of the alleged 1.8 billion pesos travel funds of the Speaker's office. However, Celis refused to reveal his source even when offered an executive session.
So the Sergeant of Arms is hereby directed to enforce the decision of this committee.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment, Mr. Chair?
Session suspended. Attorney Tolentino.
Thank you for this kangaroo court.
Session suspended.
Thank you for this kangaroo court. Thank you for this kangaroo court.
The franchise committee maintains that their action against Celis is justified due to his refusal to reveal his information source. However, Celis asserts the SOTA law, or RA 11458, granting journalists the right to protect their sources.
Karapatan po ng mamamayan ang ipinagtatanggol dito. Ang konstitusyon ay bahagi ng batas, pinakamataas na batas ng ating bansa. I will be detained for life, so be it. I will stand for my right, otherwise I will lose my right and the people's rights.
He will refuse to answer any question that Honorable Suarez will ask, and he would always cite a law which is unacceptable to this committee.
The House previously stated that the travel expenses for the entire Congress this year were only over 39 million pesos and not 1.8 billion pesos. Celis insists that he was merely asking if the House's travel expenses indeed reach 1.8 billion pesos. Celis had earlier apologized to Speaker Romualdez if his questioning caused any damage to the official's reputation. SMNI remains open to the House's side on Kaerik's kangaroo court statement. For Ganabulab, Philippines, I'm Jay Mondeha, SMNI News.
Former presidential spokesperson Attorney Harry Roque defended SMNI anchors Celis and Dr. Lorraine Badoy against contempt charges filed by the House. Here's the news from Daniela Paulida.
Former presidential spokesperson Attorney Harry Roque reacted on the contempt charges filed by the House against SMNI anchors Jeffrey K. Eric Celis and Dr. Lorraine Badoy. This followed K. Eric's refusal to reveal the source of the information about the alleged 1.8 billion pesos travel expense of Speaker Martin Romualdez during the second hearing of the House Legislative Franchises Committee on SMNI. Citing the Soto law, Attorney Roque said that a media practitioner cannot be forced to reveal their source.
Well, malinaw naman kung anong lingwahe ng batas. Hindi mo po pwedeng pilitin na ma-reveal ang source. Bakit? Kasi kapag wala po yung tinatawag na Soto Shield Law, wala nang magkakaroon ng kumpiyansa na magsiwalat ng impormasyon sa media. At alam naman natin na pag nangyari yan, naku, masusupil po ang kalayaan ng malayang pananalita at pamamahayag. Dahil alam naman natin na yung mga katiwalian, hindi naman inasa sa publiko yan. Talagang sinisikreto yan, no? Kaya kinakailangan magkaroon ng kumpiyansa na ang mga magsisiwalat ng katotohanan, hindi mapapangalanan para gantihan ng mga tao na isa sa publiko ang kanilang mga ginagawa, no?
According to Attorney Roque, K. Eric's question should have been aired during the hearing, and the public should have been allowed to judge whether he was lying.
Ano ba ang masamang ginawa ni K. Eric? Siya po'y nagtanong lamang. At ang problema po dito ngayon sa di umano, pagdinig sa Kongreso, bakit hindi nila binobroadcast yung tanong ni K. Eric? Di ba po? Bakit hindi nila hayaang ang publiko ang maghusga kung meron nga siyang kasinungalingan na sinabi o fake news na ipinapakalat? Kung ang kasalanan ay pagtatanong, ano po ang batas na nagsasabi na yan po?
Who is also a former lawmaker stressed that there should have been a separate hearing before citing K. Eric and Dr. Badoy for contempt. He argued that it is not the duty of the Congress to interpret the law, as only the court has that authority. He stated that the Congress' responsibility is to formulate and enact laws.
Kinakailangan meron munang due process bago ipakulong. Dito po nakita natin, hindi naman po nadinig yung dalawa. Pinakulong na lang sila basta-basta. Dapat po nagkaroon ng hiwalay na pagdinig kung bakit sila dapat patawan ng parusa ng criminal contempt. Kasi ang contempt po ay criminal. Dahil sa di umano ay hindi pag-reveal ng source o di naman kaya yung pagsabi ng kasinungalingan.
Attorney Roque also believes that the events that unfolded on Tuesday serve as a message to all journalists.
Ang mensahe dito na ipinadadala sa lahat ng mga mamamahayag, pag hindi kayo nagtino, pag hindi kayo pumuri sa mga naghaharing uri, makukulong kayo. Na isang bagay na talaga naman pong ipinagbabawal ng ating saligang batas dahil nga po sa importansya ng kalayaan ng malayang pananalita.
In the end, Attorney Roque called on all members of the press to show their support for K. Eric and Dr. Badoy.
Kayo po'y kikilalanin bilang mga bayani para sa kalayaan ng malayang pamamahayag. Antayin po natin ang husga ng kasaysayan.
Meanwhile, K. Eric and Dr. Badoy will remain in the House until the committee report on the SMNI's franchise investigation is adopted. For God and my beloved country, this has been Daniela Paulite, SMNI News.
The government of Brazil has proposed a $250 billion mechanism for the conservation of the world's precious tropical rainforests. Natalia Prado reports live. Hi Natalia, where will the source of the funding come from and how will it be distributed?
Yes, Kristel, the funding will be raised from governments and the private sector and will be given to tropical countries that met targets for limiting deforestation.
The initiative, known as the Tropical Forest Forever Fund, was announced by Brazil's Environment Minister and the Finance Minister during the ongoing United Nations Climate Change Summit in Dubai. Aims to raise $250 billion for efforts to protect and restore the world's tropical forests. Countries that are not able to meet deforestation targets will have their funding reduced. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva wants to reposition the country as a leader in efforts to tackle climate change.
initiative comes at the time when countries worldwide are looking for solutions to address climate change and other challenges affecting the environment. Back to you, Kristel.
Thank you, Natalia, for that live update. In other news, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has called off a high-profile meeting with U.S. lawmakers as the future of U.S. funding for Ukraine is uncertain. Andrea Santos has the details.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy was supposed to hold a virtual meeting in the U.S. Senate and House. However, it was canceled at the last moment. Western media reports said the meeting then became heated and descended into a partisan squabbling as U.S. lawmakers shifted their focus to debate over U.S. border policy and continued assistance to Ukraine. According to U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Zelensky's team called off the virtual appearance just moments before it was set to happen because something had come up for the leader. No further details were provided on this. Administration officials were expected to offer updates on a massive military aid package for both Israel and Ukraine currently under negotiations in Congress, a funding that the White House has repeatedly urged American lawmakers to approve. However, some Republican lawmakers have sought to link new Ukraine assistance to funding for U.S. border agencies to tackle the surge of migration in the country, with multiple U.S. senators threatening to hold up the spending bill unless it includes the provisions for immigration controls. Meanwhile, reports emerged that after Zelensky's sudden cancellation and the squabbling that happened among lawmakers after that, some Republicans, including Senator Feb Fisher and Mitt Romney, walked out early. Romney also took to X about the matter, saying, quote, Dems or Democrats want $106 billion. GOP wants a closed border. That's the trade. But clueless Dems wants to negotiate the border bill. Not going to happen. Is an open border more important to Dems than Ukraine and Israel? End of quote. Andrei Yermak, Zelensky's chief of staff, earlier warned of a big risk of Ukrainian defeat without continued support from the United States. Yermak's words were given just hours before Zelenskyy abruptly pulled out of the virtual meeting with U.S. lawmakers. Ukraine has yet to provide any comment regarding the cancellation. To recall, U.S. President Joe Biden has requested a huge spending package worth $106 billion to fund several priorities of his government, namely the military aid to Israel and Ukraine. And recently, White House's Office of Management and Budget Director Shalanda Young said that the U.S. will run out of funding to send weapons and assistance to Ukraine by the end of the year. According to Young, as of mid-November, the Pentagon has spent 97% of the $62.3 billion U.S. dollars it received from Kiev this 2023. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department and U.S. Agency for International Development have used up all of the funds allocated. Young also warned that the economy of Ukraine could implode without the continued assistance of the United States, saying that Ukraine will not be able to keep fighting, full stop, in the event of a severe downturn. Reporting, this has been Andrea Santos, SMNI News.
The United States is considering the formation of a new naval task force in the Red Sea after the latest attack launched by Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. The move comes amid rising tensions between Washington and Tehran. Jonathan Okobo has the details.
The U.S. military plans to strengthen its presence in the region by setting up a new naval task force in the Red Sea. The U.S. said the naval task force would escort commercial ships passing through the strategic waterway. The announcement comes after American forces accused Iran-backed Houthi rebels of attacking 3 commercial ships and a U.S. warship this past weekend. A spokesman for the Yemeni armed forces, however, claimed responsibility. Drone and missile attacks on 2 ships they describe as being linked to Israel, but have not acknowledged targeting a U.S. Navy vessel. Defense Department officials also said it shot down 3 drones in self-defense, even though it was not clear if the U.S. Navy destroyer was the main target of a drone launch from Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen. The proposed new task force will join 5 naval task forces deployed by the United States in the Middle East. Around 8.8 million barrels of oil a day are shipped through the Red Sea, with the natural gas transported from the Gulf to Europe, the United States, and China, making it one of the world's most crucial waterways. The U.S. military strengthened its presence in the Middle East after the Israel-Gaza war erupted on October 7. Iran, for its part, warned of the inevitable expansion of the war in Gaza and that the U.S. will not be spared if the fighting in the war-torn territory continues. تجربة المزيد تحدثي أتقرب بهاي كنا جوتن كوزمان نيوز نقدر بمرتس.
Japan will sign a treaty with Britain and Italy next week to build advanced fighter jets in the coming months. Natsumi Kojima will tell us more.
Representatives from Britain and Italy are set to visit the Japanese capital of Tokyo next week to sign a treaty of cooperation for the development of next-generation fighter jets. The three countries plan to choose Britain as the headquarters for the Global Combat Air Program. The parliaments of each country must ratify the agreement to pursue their first major defense industry collaboration. This is Japan's first major industrial defense collaboration beside the United States since World War II. The initiative will combine Britain and Japan's next-generation fighter jet systems. The three countries, however, remain low-profile when it comes to the exact details of the said partnership. The three countries also plan to set up a control tower for the joint development of a next-generation fighter jet in 2024. Ijo, Nihon kara Kojima Natsumi News atsutai shimashita. SMNI News, Japan.
Japan will host the G7 online summit, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is expected to participate. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will lead the virtual summit of the Group of 7 industrialized nations, marking the end of his role as the rotating chair of the bloc this year. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is scheduled to attend this online summit. It can be noted that Ukraine is not a member of the G7. Leaders will discuss the Russia-Ukraine war and the conflict between Israel and Hamas. According to Japan's top government spokesman, the International Comprehensive Framework for Advanced Artificial Intelligence will also be part of the discussion. Prime Minister Kishida previously hosted an in-person G7 summit in May in his home constituency in Hiroshima. The G7 includes the United Kingdom, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, United States, and the European Union. Arabia's energy minister dismissed a proposal to phase out fossil fuels and accused countries advocating to stop its production of hypocrisy. Melchizedek Cadiz has the details.
Saudi Arabian Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman opposed a proposition advocating the phase down of fossil fuels. This comes as approximately more than 70,000 delegates from about 200 countries gathered in Dubai for the United Nations COP28 climate talks. Delegates are negotiating a tentative proposal to phase down or phase out fossil fuels, included in a first draft of an agreement on climate action that they needed to finish on December 12. Numerous countries at COP28, including the US and the EU, called for a stronger commitment to phase out or reduce reliance on fossil fuels. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres last week called for a total phase out of fossil fuels and warned of complete disaster if the current trajectory continues. Prince Abdulaziz, who is the half-brother of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, challenged those supporting the total phase-out of fossil fuels to present a clear roadmap on how they can implement such a proposal by January 2024. The Saudi royal described the $655 million funding from donors, including the United States and the European Union, as small change, while campaigners have also criticized the donation allotted for vulnerable countries as insufficient. The Saudi energy minister hailed Riyadh's pledges to developing countries, such as the $50 billion fund announced at the Saudi Africa Summit in Riyadh last month. Last year, Saudi Arabia pledged to spend $2.5 billion over the next 10 years to support green projects across the Middle East and to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2060. The kingdom is also on track to achieve its goal of reducing carbon emissions by 278 million tons a year by 2030. Reporting this has been Melchizedek Cadiz, SMNI News, Kuwait.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fumed over human rights groups and accused them of turning a blind eye to alleged sexual violence committed by Hamas during the unprecedented October 7th attack. Jane Kodita reports.
Speaking at a news conference, Israeli Prime Minister accused the international community of playing down the attacks of Hamas on October 7 and even ignoring them. Netanyahu noted that he met with released hostages and relatives of those still held in Gaza and that he heard heartbreaking stories of abuse. But the Israeli Prime Minister said he has not heard women's and human rights groups scream against the violence done by Hamas who attacked on October 7 and asked if they were silent because it was Jewish women. Netanyahu then switched in English to emphasize his point regarding women's rights organizations for not speaking up.
I say to the women's rights organizations, to the human rights organizations, you've heard of the rape of Israeli women? Horrible atrocities, sexual mutilation? Where the are you?
The Israeli Prime Minister also mentioned that the military's ground offensive in Gaza had expanded into the south of the Gaza Strip and that there is no place beyond their reach. Israel's Justice Ministry said that the victims of Hamas suffered atrocities, but Hamas rejected all allegations that their members committed sexual assault. Reporting, this has been Jane Konita, SMNI News.
The Gulf Cooperation Council, or the GCC, condemned Israel for what the council calls as indiscriminate bombing of the Gaza Strip and called for an immediate ceasefire in the enclave. Ruth Hamilton has the details.
The leaders of the Gulf Cooperation Council, or GCC, adopted the Doha Declaration at the 44th session of the GCC Supreme Council held in the Qatari capital of Doha, which warned of the dangers of the expanding confrontations and the spillover of the conflict to other regions across the Middle East. The declaration also warned that the Middle Eastern region is facing dangerous challenges and claimed that Israel's indiscriminate bombing of the Palestinian enclave has led to an escalation of the situation. It also called for efforts to achieve a comprehensive and sustainable ceasefire and ensure the entry of all humanitarian aid supplies into Gaza. It can be noted that leaders and representatives of the 6 GCC countries attended the summit, with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan invited as their guest. This comes as the Hamas-run government's media office recently reported that the death toll of the Palestinian side has increased to 16,248. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization said that the number of functioning hospitals in Gaza has dropped from 36 to 18 since the war between Israel and Hamas broke out on October 7. World Health Organization also called on the Israeli side to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. Ashraf al-Qadra, spokesman of the Hamas-run health ministry, accused Israel of escalating its targeting of hospitals and health facilities. But the Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, claimed that Hamas has been using Gaza's hospitals for military operations. The Shifa Hospital is believed to be one of the main centers of the underground terror tunnel infrastructure of Hamas. This is Ruth Hamilton, SMNI News.
A tragic shooting incident occurred in East London, United Kingdom, that left a woman dead and 2 more people have been injured. The woman, 42 years old, died on the spot, while the 2 wounded individuals, a 20-year-old man and a 16-year-old boy, were taken to a hospital. The shooting incident happened in a small housing development in Vine Close, a residential part of Hackney. The police were called to the area after reports of a shooting incident. The UK Metropolitan Police has launched a murder investigation, and so far, no arrests have been made. UK Detective Superintendent Vicky Tunstall described the incident as shocking and said that her thoughts were with all those affected. Tunstall also said the gun crime has no place on the streets of London. The Metropolitan Police officers will remain at the scene overnight and will be in the area over the coming days. Australia braces for a widespread heat wave set to affect half of the country throughout the week. Deva Suarez has the details.
The Bureau of Meteorology forecasted a 3-day heat wave for parts of Australia, with several states to experience severe heat wave conditions and high temperatures until weekend. From Wednesday to Friday, a low-intensity heat wave will make its way to Western Australia, parts of the Northern Territory, South Australia, Queensland, Canberra and Sydney. These states will experience severe heat wave conditions, but New South Wales, South Australia and Southern Queensland will be affected the most. The heat wave conditions will be followed by cool change and rainfall by the weekend, while high temperatures will continue for much of inland New South Wales. Australia has tackled dozens of bushfires this year as severe heat wave gripped the country after 2 years of rains and floods. Major heat waves are Australia's deadliest natural hazards and cause more deaths than any other natural disaster, including bushfires, cyclones and floods. Reporting from New South Wales, this is Devi Suarez, SMNI News, Australia.
Romania has declared a nationwide measles epidemic after recording nearly 2,000 new cases in 29 of its 41 counties. Romania is seeking to boost vaccination rates in children aged 9 to 11 months old, as well as individuals who have not completed the vaccination schedule. According to the Romanian Health Ministry, vaccination rates in the EU state have dropped over the past 10 years, with 78% of eligible children having received one shot against measles, while only 62% had 2 doses of the vaccine. Health Minister Alexandru Rafila lamented the gradual increase of vaccination or vaccine hesitancy in Romania, and this sentiment increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, Rafila said that 95% coverage is considered enough to keep the risk of measles outbreak in check. Measles vaccination is included in Romania's national immunization schedule for children, with the first shot usually given to 1-year-olds. The health minister will also launch an information campaign for better adherence to the vaccination program. According to the World Health Organization, measles is a highly contagious, serious airborne disease caused by a virus that can lead to severe complications and death. It can affect anyone, but it is most common in children. WHO also said being vaccinated is the best way to prevent getting sick with measles or spreading it to other people. Ratings agency Moody's downgraded its outlook on the Chinese government's credit ratings to negative from stable. Meanwhile, Chinese official from the country's finance ministry said that the agency's concerns about China's growth prospects are unwarranted. Shekinah Dikinya reports.
Moody's, a ratings agency, changed the outlook on the Chinese government's credit ratings from stable to negative. Moody's retained China's A1 long-term rating on the sovereign bonds of the country, while expecting the annual gross domestic product or GDP growth to slow to 4% in 2024 and 2025 and average 3.8% from 2026 to 2030. Moody's also said that structural factors, including weak demographics, will drive a decline to 3.5% by 2030. China, however, expressed disappointment with Moody's move to change the country's credit rating outlook. According to a CCTV report, in response to a media inquiry on Moody's change of the outlook to negative from stable, the official from the Ministry of Finance said Moody's concerns about China's growth prospects and fiscal sustainability are unwarranted. The Chinese official, whose name was not disclosed, said that in the first 3 quarters, China's fiscal revenue continued to recover. The process of making budgetary funds available for fiscal expenditures was sped up at a reasonable speed, and funding for key areas were effectively guaranteed. Local fiscal revenues had experienced positive growth in general, with nearly half of the localities recording double-digit growth. The official further said that all these facts prove that China's economy is shifting to high-quality development, and the country is capable enough of deepening reforms and coping with risks and challenges. It can be noted that earlier in November, Moody's downgraded its outlook on the U.S. government from stable to negative, citing the rising risks to the nation's large fiscal deficits and declining debt affordability. And in late November, the Bank of Israel and U.S. ratings agency Moody's have reduced Israeli economic growth forecasts amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. In late November, the Israeli Central Bank said it now expects Israel's economy to grow by 2% in 2023 and 2024. That is down from its previous forecast in October of growth of 2.3% in 2023 and 2.8% in 2024. Reporting for Newsline World, Shikana Dikinya, SMNI News.
Malaysia and Vietnam strengthened their defense ties through the signing of a memorandum of understanding as both countries mark 50 years of strong bilateral ties. Anissa de Guzman has the news.
The Defense Minister of Malaysia embarked on a 3-day working visit to Hanoi, Vietnam for high-level talks with his Vietnamese counterpart. The two ministers signed a memorandum of understanding on defense cooperation after their high-level talks. The MOU marked their shared dedication toward regional security and collaborative defense initiatives. The Malaysian Defense Minister visited Vietnam from December 3 to 5 upon the invitation of his Vietnamese counterpart. Malaysia and Vietnam share a lot of cultural and historical similarities and are active members of ASEAN. Both countries also reached an agreement to double the effort of their bilateral trade to $18 billion by 2025. Reporting for Newsline World, Anissa de Guzman, SMNI News.
Thailand and Hong Kong launched a cross-border QR code payment service to provide seamless payment experience for travelers. Chapang Kompis Samay has the news.
Cross-border QR code payment service launched by Thailand and Hong Kong will not only provide a fast and easily accessible retail payment experience, but also aims to boost tourism from both sides.
The initiative will allow travelers from Thailand and Hong Kong to make retail payments by using their mobile payment applications. Payments can be made through the link between Thailand's PromptPay and Hong Kong's Faster Payment System, FPS. The governor of the Bank of Thailand hailed the collaboration as a significant step towards a more interconnected and digitized financial landscape in the region. About 1.5 million tourists from Hong Kong and Thailand will benefit from the cross-border QR payment system.
Thailand aims to attract more travelers from Hong Kong and mainland China through the said initiative. The government is expecting to see 3.4 million Chinese visitors by the end of the year. รายงานจากราชบุรี นายชัดมงคลพิสมัยโกศล SMNI ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
The Singaporean Ministry of Health declared that the number of COVID-19 infections continues to rise across the country, prompting the government to implement stricter measures to combat the spread of the virus. The ministry stated that the jump in cases may be attributed to factors such as travel outside Singapore and a decline in population immunity. The EG.5 and the sublineage HK.3 remain the primary subvariants in Singapore, accounting for over 70% of cases. There is currently no indication that the primary subvariants are more transmissible or can cause more severe illness compared to other variants in circulation. The Singaporean Health Ministry also urged the public to act responsibly for their health and the well-being of others by adhering to social distancing guidelines, hand hygiene, and avoiding contact with individuals showing symptoms of illness. China, which has experienced an increase in influenza-like illness since mid-October, has attributed the rise to the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions and the shifting of known pathogens, especially influenza and common bacterial infections affecting children, including Mycoplasma pneumonia. According to the World Health Organization, Chinese authorities reported that they haven't identified uncommon or new pathogens. During the very first jail decongestion summit, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. urged the judiciary to implement digitalization to expedite the country's justice system. Meanwhile, the president also emphasized the summit's goal of accelerating the processing of criminal cases. The details with Val Divini Gracia.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. encouraged members of the Justice Sector Coordinating Council, or JSCC, to continue streamlining and digitalizing their frontline and back-end services as part of nationwide decongestion efforts. The president's speech was delivered by Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, while Marcos remained in isolation after testing positive for COVID-19. In the message, President Marcos welcomed the JSCC's initiative to hold the National Jail Decongestion Summit in Manila on Wednesday. Marcos urged summit participants to develop innovative solutions and create a more modern justice system compared to traditional approaches in delivering justice.
By embracing technology and innovative practices, we can enhance our efficiency, reduce delays, and ensure swift and fair legal proceedings.
Marcos added that by implementing best practices from other countries, the Philippines can adopt innovative solutions to help address challenges faced by the justice system in the country. The president expressed confidence that discussions during the summit would lead to better policies and measures related to the justice system. Marcos also highlighted that the ongoing summit is a significant occasion aimed at decongesting prisons in the country, and that this event also aims to expedite the processing of criminal cases heard in courts. The chief executive expressed confidence that the summit would generate effective policies from the concerned agencies.
This gathering is most welcome as it demonstrates the commitment of the entire government to expedite the processing of criminal cases and to alleviate the chronic problem of jail congestion. Indeed, it would require a whole-of-government approach to ensure the efficient, effective, and compassionate administration of justice in the country.
President Marcos also emphasized his administration's commitment to support the collaborative efforts between the executive and judiciary, saying that justice will not be denied to every citizen in need. The Philippines' first National Decongestion Summit is titled Decongest and Reintegrate, a conference to unlock solutions to jail and prison overcrowding. The summit aims to bring together legal experts, government agencies, international organizations, and advocates. It focuses on plenary sessions and workshops related to jail decongestion efforts and the best practices of other countries. Efforts to decongest prisons nationwide include the annual recommendation of executive clemency for qualified inmates or persons deprived of liberty, or PDLs. After the event, Supreme Court Chief Justice Alexander Hismundo, in an interview, talked about his expectations regarding the many reforms in the penal system and prison decongestion. Hismundo added that they expect these reforms to be implemented as soon as possible.
Marami kaming ginagawa sa Supreme Court. Number one, for example, we are revising the rules on criminal procedure to ensure that criminal cases are processed expeditiously from the beginning of the case up to the end. Also, we're trying to use technology in our court processes also to ensure that the processing of cases is expedited.
Justice Department Assistant Secretary and spokesperson Miko Calvano shared some activities and strategies at the summit. These include reducing prison admissions, increasing releases when sentences are completed, and expanding prison facility capacities.
Yung unang-una dyan, yung decrease admissions. That's one of the sub-points doon sa decreasing admissions. Others, yung bail, reduced bail amounts, yung higher threshold of evidence required for preliminary investigation. But there are also long-term activities that we are looking at.
The summit continues until December 7. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, this is Valdivina Gracia, SMNI News.
And before we end, may be inspired with a message of the appointed Son of God. Discipline and sacrifice are the ingredients to success. And for our our Christmas countdown. It's only 18 days to go before Christmas. And that's all for today's edition of Newsline World. For more news update, you may visit SMNINewsChannel.com or follow us on our official social media accounts on Rumble, Facebook, and Twitter. For my God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Kristel Guangco. Thank you for watching Newsline World, and thank you to our of this program. May you continue to listen on SMNI as it delivers nothing but fair, truthful, and balanced news. For SMNI is your source of credible news.